The nation is under siege. The nation is under siege.
Good evening, everybody. This is Divided We Stand. It is July 7th, 2024, our 224th show. Something we hadn't expected. We expected this to probably last perhaps a year. Well, things happen. If you are unfamiliar with this channel, we ask that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us there on Divided We Stand. There are quite a few Divided We Stands on YouTube, but you can leaf through it and you'll find us. Also, if you are not on YouTube, you can check out our group page on Facebook. It's called the Divided We Stand page, and that one might be a little bit easier to find. It is a private group, but if you join, you'll be sure to be approved, as long as you're not a trumper or a troll or whatever, or a bot. So please commiserate with us. We don't ask for anything. We're demonetized. We have no interest in earning money from anybody. We just want to have a conversation and to make some change before it's too late. In any case, I'd like to introduce my good friend and co-host, writer, journalist, former educator, and altogether pain in the ass. That would be our David Price. If I can get him in here. Boom. There he is. He's in. You tell us where you are right now, Dave.
Well, let's see. I'm in the ninth floor of a hotel called The Study, and it overlooks the scenic campus of the University of Chicago. So I'm in Chicago here for a couple reasons. One is our granddaughter is doing a special program at the University of Chicago, 7 weeks of research. So we came to see her, and then in another surprise, our son Michael, whose birthday is today, he's 51 today.
Wow.
He bundled up Audrey's brother because they hadn't fought for a couple weeks and they needed to do that, and brought him up here. So everybody but our daughter-in-law and the immediate family is here, and she's enjoying herself with the peace and quiet at home. So Judy and I have taken in some of the sites, especially on the University of Chicago. And in a serious note, I've never been on the campus before. It now has replaced anything else as my favorite campus that I've ever been on. It really is impressive. So it's nice, it's city, which we like, or I like, but it's also a lot of greenery here. And right next to, I'm actually looking right at the building. Next to us is the David Rubenstein think tank. Mr. Rubenstein has millions and millions and millions of dollars. He just gave millions and millions and millions of dollars to the Smithsonian with a whole collection. So, so that's where we are. Normally I'd be from Arlington, but we go to a few other places. So Chicago is where it is. It is interesting, though, politically. I've been talking to some people about what they expect coming up because, of course, the Democratic convention will be here. And the last Democratic convention here, I think it was the last, I don't think there's been one since then, was 1968. And those who are around then are kind of hoping they don't get a replay of that. But they are expecting, as they are in Milwaukee, protests, and who knows, as temperatures continue to rise, both in the environment because of climate change and here because of politics, who knows? And that might be the title of our show tonight, who knows? So, Brian, I'll start with you. What is going to happen? Let's start with Mr. Biden. President Biden. What is going to happen with President Biden? What do you see? You know,
Well, first of all, I don't think President Biden, Joe Biden, knows himself what he's going to do yet. He certainly said he's in it for the long haul. However, it's just what Democrats do sometimes. He was interviewed by George Stephanopoulos. He had, I guess, a few interviews. And as it turns out, it's something I brought up. I'll bet you he had the questions ahead of time. So in one of these radio interviews, he fed the interviewer the questions. And of course, that got out. And everything like that's going to come out. And it just depresses the Biden supporter, because here you're trying to show that that was just a one-off. You can handle the questions, and what do you do then? You just blow it, and I don't know. I don't know what to say. I mean, look, you and I are going to vote for Joe no matter what, whether he's in or he's out.
correct.
But we have to discuss this tonight with the people in the audience also. What is the best move? John Fetterman made an impassioned, I don't want to say a speech, but he was interviewed by Ali Velshi a couple of nights ago. He did a great job defending Biden, and I get it, because he himself has gone through health issues. But I think this is different than Fetterman. I think this is much more serious than Fetterman.
Well,
What do you think?
well, let's start with there is no more serious, right? It's the President of the United States. And the question of Joe Biden that was reasonable. I mean, remove the Trumpers, remove the partisan Republicans, all of that. The question was reasonable. Can he or whoever handle the presidency? And a lot of people said no, because of his age, that he can't. Now, a couple of people have pointed out that that's probably not the best way to look at it, because he has handled the presidency very well
Absolutely.
for 4 years. But but there are still disturbing statistics in the way that he handled it. Fewest press conferences, not some public opinion. But let me talk about a little bit about that journalist and give you questions. First of all, it's not unusual. It's never been unusual for
But he should know that
politicians.
coming in. I mean, I know that they
For,
do
well,
that.
for politicians coming in to say, as part of the agreed interview, here are the questions that we're prepared to ask. That's not unheard of before, right? So what would be interesting, and Brian, this is kind of my mantra all the time now. It's not what you do, it's the motive behind it. Okay. So my question would be twofold there. As I say, it's not unusual for that to be worked out, and it's been done before. Okay. People who aren't in journalism don't know how it works, just like I don't know how brain surgery works, or I don't even know how plumbing works, or anything that I'm not have a career in. So I would like to know about that issue, and I think it's very important to know, and I don't know that we could get a truthful answer. Number one, why did the female black reporter announce that she was given the questions before? Number one. Number two, what did she agree to before that interview? Did she agree only to ask those questions? Right? Then it's kind of, going back on your word, which you're not supposed to do if you're a journalist. So that's one set of questions. And the other set of questions would be to the organization itself, which is now let her go. Now, what you're reading on Truth Social and the X, the social media site formerly known as Twitter, is that President Joe Biden is destroying black women by ending their employment. Well, the extreme end. But however, as we know more details, and that might seem like a minor thing, but see, to me, that's something you can kind of get at truth. Like, if the people will deliver that. So number one, there's been no word from the White House that the questions were not prepared and handed. So it sounds like that part is true, right? Now it gets to, what did the reporter agree to? Then why did she say
But is it that
about,
important right now to even
yeah,
go any
yeah,
further with it?
yeah,
I mean, I'm
because
talking about
what
the
happened,
show here. I'm talking about
No,
in the media.
no. But what has to happen is you you have to answer the questions directly, and that's the White House's job to do that. All right. You know what I found most disturbing? I really do about this, and I don't get it. Okay. First of all, we'll never know. I don't think we'll ever never know why Joe Biden had the worst presidential debate in the history of presidential debates and one of the worst debates of all time in any area. Would you agree with that?
Sure. I mean, and it wasn't so much the context,
Performance.
the
No,
performance
I'm talking
itself.
about performance.
Right.
Performance. It couldn't have been any
Let's say
worse.
visual performance. Okay.
Okay, visual performance. It couldn't have been any worse, especially because he was under fire because of the age question. Now, initially, if you recall, the word from the White House was that President Biden had a cold. Remember?
Yes.
And that, okay, you could say, well, the president should tough it out more with the cold, but okay. Then did you see what Biden turned around and said? The cold has been dropped now. You know what he's saying now was the reason for it?
I don't know. I know he said something to the effect that he admitted that he blew it, and he had too
That's
much
true.
travel prior to.
He was tired. You can't have a president that's tired.
No, you can't have Prince tired.
Okay. Then to compound it worse, he said, well, I got to get to bed earlier. I'm not going to do it. Maybe you need to get to bed. Huh?
Okay.
I'm going to get to bed at 8 o'clock. Yeah, that's what he said. And I'm going like, wait a minute.
Yeah, he
Like,
says he works from 10 to 4. Now that's weird too, don't you think?
well, I don't know. I do know the report from President Trump was he worked about 2 to 3 hours a day. That was it. That was it. Not too early in the morning, and certainly not into the evening.
Well, yeah, but
Now,
you don't
now
do anything,
what?
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, what does Biden or what do these people consider work? For me, I mean, I'm working. If I were doing this and I were getting paid for
It's
it,
a lot
this
of
is work.
meetings.
Yeah,
A
well, he
lot of
does.
meetings.
Well, of course. And politicians do have sometimes strange hours in terms of, a lot of night meetings. I don't imagine you have that in the presidency, but certainly,
There are there are meetings of various types.
of all types.
Okay, right. You could have dignitaries coming in. You have
Hmm.
your advisors coming in. You have intelligence briefings.
Correct.
I mean, there's just so much going on in that sense that you could take up the whole
Right.
day,
But let me
or at
just
least you should.
recap what bothers me in what I've just been speaking about. Number one, you gave a reason. Whether it's a good reason or not, that was the reason.
Okay.
I had a cold. He had a cold. That's it. Okay, fine. But then to change it, why would you change it, Brian? Why would they do that?
Yeah, it has a bad look to it.
It's like, oh, well, that one didn't take, so let's try
Let's try it
time.
again.
Well,
It's almost
then
like what
why?
Trump does.
Yeah, and then why would you go and pick the very thing that you're being attacked for, lack of energy, as the reason why
Right.
you did
Right.
what you showed, which was, abysmal failure. And you have to say that was an abysmal failure. Horrible. Now, you said, I will vote for, I forget which, somebody said, a politician said, I will vote for Joe Biden even if he's being administered the last rites.
Correct.
I'm in that camp. I'm going to vote and work for whomever the Democratic nominee is. But right now, the question on the table is who in the Democratic Party is best situated and best placed to defeat Donald Trump, right?
Are you asking
It's
me, or are you?
yeah, you,
Well,
you.
I think you were kind of correct last week, if I recall
Mhm.
correctly. It looks like it pretty much has to be Kamala Harris right now.
If it were somebody other than Biden, but it can be Biden too. It can also be Biden with not the secret. The idea is always the vice president is waiting in the wings, right? Um, the vice president used to be pretty much historically a geographic choice,
Right. If he
or
was from the north, the president
another
was
side.
south.
The classic mismatch, if you will, the odd
Right.
couple of politics was JFK and Lyndon Johnson. They despised one another. Their
Right.
people despised one another. They were of two different classes of people. Lyndon Johnson was a poor guy, poor teacher working his way up, glad hander, all that. The only thing they shared in common, they were both womanizers. But I'm sure Lyndon Johnson uh, would get mad because, I'm better than Kennedy even there. How come he gets more women than I do? How come he gets Marilyn Monroe and all like whatever. But that's the way it was. But now, that kind of fell aside with Clinton Gore. They were both, almost one from Arkansas, one from Tennessee. Although Gore was really raised in Washington D.C., with his
Right.
father being, but he did come from Tennessee. I mean, that was his roots. Now, Kamala Harris was chosen for a number of reasons. She's very articulate. She is that. She was running, but she was chosen for gender balance and racial balance. And it worked, right? They won.
Absolutely.
And so it is whenever you win, your vice presidential choice was a good choice if you're talking about winning, which we are here. Now, the question is, of course, well, let me ask you this way. You're answering for everybody, and people that are listening and viewing, please chime in with your thoughts too. Two names, Joe Biden on one hand, Kamala Harris on the other hand. Who do you think has the better chance of beating Donald Trump as of today? And let's make sure, I always want to say those parameters. We've seen so much change in the past 48 hours
Right.
that everything we say is, if it were today, what would happen? Because
Okay.
tomorrow,
I'm going to honestly say that. I mean, I think you might be leading me to say. I mean, you're not
no, I'm not
leading
leading
me,
you to say
but okay.
anything.
I think I don't know that it makes a difference one way or another right now. I think they're both kind
Okay,
of. It's so difficult to tell right now
right.
the state of that
And I would,
presidency.
and I would tend to agree with you because they each have positives and they each have negatives. And the same is true of anybody else you can name. I've spent some time, over the past week or so. I asked my Uber driver when I was in here when we were talking politics for about a half an hour. Um, you know, what would you do? I think, and everybody has a little bit. And then I was asking, what is your dream team? I haven't found two people almost to agree to the same dream team.
Mhm.
Um, it's all, if you'd say, who's vice president, who's this. Now, the number one answer for a lot of people who say you want to win, have Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama will not run for president.
And not only
Uh,
that, I think I think I know a lot of people say that if she entered the race, like you mentioned with Oprah Winfrey, that she would have the highest numbers. I think and again, I don't think that, I'm kind of like answering my question before I
no, that's
ask,
okay, but go ahead.
but I think that if she goes in as a candidate, that's like gasoline.
I
Uh,
would not disagree with you because, of course,
that's the
uh,
one candidate that I think if we're always worried about a civil war and how people react.
mhm.
That's the one candidate that, oh my God. I mean, I don't know. And I'm saying you don't back away from that just because, they're going to get
Right.
upset. You can't do that. But
Now,
that is
now,
gasoline.
okay. So I don't know. Obviously, this week I've been concentrating on stories about Biden. Where he says there's so many conflicting stories too. So many conflicting stories about some aides are saying they've seen deterioration. Others are saying it's there. You mentioned Fetterman, whose support was marvelous.
Yes, it was great. It
It
made
was
sense.
great, and of course Fetterman. What I like about Fetterman, he's probably the closest we have to a Republican fighter on the Democratic
Yeah,
side.
and he doesn't pull any punches. We always say
He's the one who says,
don't dick
"I'm going to wear."
around with this. He just says what he needs to say.
Yeah, and he comes into the Senate, and you could look down on that, I suppose. But he says, "No, I'm going to wear my sweatsuits. That's what I wear. I'm coming in with that. If you don't like it, throw me out." Kind of thing. So he's that kind of personality. But
And
I
the
thought,
guys asked about Adam Schiff. I don't think. No, I don't
here's what
think.
here's what
Yeah.
happens. Adam Schiff is our boy, okay. And the way I look at it, Adam has done great in his position. See, Brian, that's another thing with politics. It's sort of like let's use some sports analogies. I always say, don't use sports analogies. We'll use one. on a baseball team, right? Major leaguers carry anywhere between usually 10 to 12 pitchers, right? And they each have a role. And that's because they fit that role. You have starters, you have mid relievers, you have closers. You have even now, if you've noticed, they have seventh inning pitchers, eighth inning
Right.
pitchers,
It's so
and
bizarre.
closers. But that's because their skill set, and I hate that term, but their skills, it's not a set, it's their skills. Leave the damn set off. Their skills suit that.
Right.
And I think Adams right now, his skills are, and then there's value on top of that. His value is not leading the country, but being the spokesperson that he's been for the Democrat values and views. Now that might lead him someday, right, to
Right.
that. Um, the two names that come up a lot, Gavin Newsom, and he, like everybody else, he's not beloved of the Republicans in California. And then Gretchen Whitmer. I really like her. I really do. But again, they haven't been vetted nationally. You're talking about what? Let's do this. What do we have? We're in July, right? Is that right?
Right.
August, September, October, 3 months, right? Basically,
Right.
to put together and run a national campaign. There's also funding issues, which has really come to the forefront. The money right now is earmarked to the Biden Harris campaign. That's the only contributions that have been made. That's who it went to. And there's questions of, since Biden's the top of the ticket, can Harris, pick up that money if something happens? And what does that then do to her candidacy? Does that move her up?
Well, do you think that if they did move Kamala up, and let's suppose they said, okay, we've got to, because if you have Kamala, now you're really going to have two people you have to decide. Because now, I mean, do you have Kamala Harris and you have Sheldon Whitehouse, or do you do your thing where you get somebody in the South? How does that work?
Well,
Because
again,
not just Kamala Harris. Now you've got to choose a vice presidential candidate too.
and you're right. I mean, and we're going to go on all night with this, and I don't think it's bad. I think people need to
We're talking
understand.
about two people now.
Well,
that
we're
have-
talking about many. I mean, you're talking about all kinds of people. That all kinds of things are going on. So you've got that, and again, does Kamala get to pick the person she wants, right?
And that's another
and
issue.
or does the Democratic Party put the package together? And if that leaks, which it would, that wouldn't look good.
Well, maybe somebody does know something. Maybe Axelrod, because he's an insider. Maybe he does
Well, you
know
heard what
what's
you
going
heard.
on.
There's nobody stronger than David Axelrod saying, Joe, please, dear God, please, for yourself, for your country, for
Right.
everything, get out, get out.
See, that's what bothers me now. That after listening to Fetterman, I said, okay, John Fetterman, he's got it right. Let's just stay with Biden. Then all of a sudden, Axelrod, because Axelrod, he knows everybody.
But the problem becomes, again, here we are. We're back to my original point: motive. Why? And when they say motive, everybody thinks dark motives. No, there's great motives out there. Why is David Axelrod saying what he's saying?
Right.
Is it because that he really believes that? Is it because he kind of likes it now that he's on every talk show, not talk show, but every news, network?
Yeah, but he kind of has he's kind of like Carville. He does have a pulse.
Well, I'll tell you what. Jim Carville is my favorite.
And what does he say?
Jim Carville is in worse mental shape, I think, right now than Joe Biden.
Oh, really?
I really do. Yeah. He how can I say this? He looks, he's aged, and Carville's not as sharp. And again, he's been out of the game for a while, And he's saying I don't think he liked Biden from the get go.
Really?
I don't mean that personally. I'm saying so. And you got to remember that whether he likes it or not, Carville and Clinton are bonded forever, right? And again, we try on this show not to pass on things that are just hearsay. But I found this interesting this week, and sometimes hearsay maybe makes sense. And this brings up Michelle Obama. If you've noticed, Michelle Obama has not said a word about Joe Biden.
Well, she's defended him, but
No, no, find me a place.
Well, she's defending his
Barack,
job. Oh
what?
no, I'm talking. Are we talking about Kamala? Okay,
No,
no,
we're talking about Michelle
Michelle
Obama.
Obama. Okay, I'm sorry. I
That's
fell off a
okay.
cliff.
I figured that was where it was.
Okay.
You had a Joe Biden moment.
Yes.
Which is true. I mean, you're not 81. We all
Right.
had those. I mean, but that. So should you be replaced? I've wanted to replace you for a long time with Stormy Daniels, but that's just a personal preference of mine. So, what happens with Michelle Obama? The story, I don't want to say breaks. There's been a story this week going around, and I think I'm getting it right. If anybody out there knows more or I get it wrong, please let me know. The story runs something like this. So the Biden, Joe Biden is pretty much kind of, you know, it seems like a decent guy, right? But of course, been problems with his son, and the problems are caused by addiction, okay, among other things. And it's probably not easy being the son of Joe Biden, I would assume. But and then Hunter divorced his wife, right, and took up with his brother. Just got a little weird there. But apparently, his wife and Michelle Obama had really bonded, and she felt that the Bidens, for lack of Michelle probably wouldn't use these words, but the Biden shit on Hunter's ex-wife and made her look like the bad guy when it was really Hunter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that may well be true. Obama has not been as strong a support as you might expect from the supposed Biden Obama bromance. And the word in Washington D.C. now is that Barack is speaking, holding the line, but he's privately really worried and dismayed, and thinks that maybe Biden should go. Now we don't know if that's true or not, right? We don't know.
I
I
first,
mean,
first of all, again, I'm just a layman here. I've
right?
never, I never thought you could say that Biden was close with Obama, but I didn't have that feel that Obama was close with Biden.
No, no, but because they're two different styles too. Obama's style is cold and distant. That's Obama's style. He's an intellectual. In fact, he has claimed that his profession is writing. That's really how he views himself. Um, Biden, of course, is the warm colors and touchy feely, which is that. So let's get back now on track here about what to do. Well, you know what, Brian? I mean, I'm going to point out wherever I'm reading makes good sense. There's reasons to keep and reasons not. I think we'll know more uh, tomorrow, right? Monday. I think Senator Mark Warner, who is pretty well respected in the Senate, is going to try to gather some senators and have the come to Jesus meeting with Biden
Do you
and
think the
Warner.
problem is now going to be with the Senate rather than Congress for Biden?
Oh, I think it's going to be with everybody. I mean, and the desperation. I mean, and we'll talk about Trump, certainly within this hour, but the desperation is we know. I mean, if you are a logical thinking person, divorced of any emotion, Donald Trump shouldn't even be on the planet. He's that bad.
He's horrible. He's toxic.
And so if you're horrible as a human being, you can't be a good president. He can't. Um, and I've seen, you've seen the numbers too. In that debate, somewhere he lied between 28 and 32 times, depending on, but nobody
Well, how
says he
many
didn't.
times did he tell the truth? That's the thing. I mean,
Well, it wouldn't be
zero or
much, right?
one. I don't know.
I'm going to say, oh, exactly, exactly. Um, so
Which
what?
made it so simple for Biden to win.
No, but Brian, you're extremely intelligent, but I think in this place you're missing the point. Biden was fucked up that night for whatever
Ever
reason.
reason. Right.
Okay, cold, tired, Secret Service dosing him, which the story ran around. They did reaction to medicine. He tells Jill, and this has been verified when he comes off. He said, she asked him, what, kind of, Fran, what the hell happened, Joe?
And as I
And,
said last week, people think they slipped him a Mickey or something. It's just
well, that's what I'm saying, the whole thing. But, he said, I don't know. I just felt so weird up there. Well, wait a minute. So I mean, but we know. So we cannot say anything. It would be like saying, you know what? Uh, and this is a true story. My family fought for the South on my father's side, and they were at Gettysburg. And if they had seen that hill before Chamberlain from Massachusetts, so, it could be the Confederacy, not the United States. It's alternate history. I mean, you can't. So that debate is gone. Um, if someday, and I don't even know how you'd prove that he was dosed. I don't think he was. But uh, again, what I wish they had done is come up with the story, whether it's true or a lie, and just stuck with it. Because once you start backtracking, and they backtracked, I want to come back to that again. They backtracked in the single worst way they
and
could.
where does the buck stop on that?
Well, it stops with
I'm
the
asking
president.
you. I don't know. Do
No,
you
I
say
said
okay?
it stops with the president. You read some of these things, and it's like advise. Nobody orders the president to do jack shit that he doesn't want to do. They don't. Okay, they can reason.
They can
When
suggest to
it's
him.
they can suggest, they can threaten, they can do whatever. And I'm not talking about just Donald Trump. I'm talking about Joe Biden. When it comes to that, when it's done, if it's his decision, it's his decision, and it's going to be his decision.
Right.
Now they can sway him, right? Obviously, you're close. We don't know, and there seems to be, and this has always been true. Uh, there's always a great division in Washington D.C. between the president's men and the members of Congress. That's always been true. Okay, they may get together and sing "Kumbaya" every once in a while, but
And
they
why
do
do you
not.
think that is, Dave?
Different powers, struggles. Um, I would imagine that Mitch McConnell feels that he's more in tune with everything than Donald Trump, and so that he and and they really have different. Well, okay. The simplest answer is this: there are three. Supposedly, there are three branches of government, and there's supposed to be checks and balances on each other, right? I mean, that's how we were supposed to
Right.
work this. So you don't like your checkers and balancers all the time,
Right.
right? You want to do carte blanche, and I think part of that is uh, senators, have a lot of power, uh, both individually and collectively. Now, the president has more power individually,
Right.
but collectively, the Senate has a lot of power.
Now that could
And now
change with the Trump presidency
we
because
haven't even
he
gotten to that
certainly
yet. Well,
could be another
let's just
Putin.
I'll say this as simply as I can for anybody. I'm saying we have no idea what a Trump presidency will involve or entail, but we know that it will not be anything like the America we have now. And by that, we don't mean more democratic. We mean more fascist, more authoritarian, more right wing, more theocratic,
Less Social
everything.
Security.
Yeah, and I kind of have a vested interest in that
Yeah.
since that's helping pay a portion of my trip here to Chicago. Um, so let's leave Mr. Biden for a moment with this. I don't know what to do, Brian. I don't know what to do, but I know this. However it shapes, I will still vote for, support, talk up. Not so much even talk up. You don't have to. You can also talk down. Continue to talk down.
Well, let me ask you this then.
Go ahead.
Okay, because you and I agree on this. We're going to vote for whomever is there.
Yeah,
It
it
doesn't
doesn't.
matter.
Right.
And most of the people watching this, it's the same thing. But what I'm saying is, how long can we wait until they make the decision? Unless Biden has
Okay.
definitely made,
Okay. No.
is it ended?
Here's now again. I don't think they've set the exact date, but a lot of people aren't aware of this, and it's the nuances. Normally in a normal, whatever the hell that is, political year, we wouldn't be seeing all this. This is the most abnormal political year. We were talking about it. I was talking about it with some Chicagoans here. As weird as '68 was, and that was a very weird year. This is light years weirder. Um, but it is my understanding that there was an agreement reached with, and why this is, I have no idea, and I haven't been able to find any reason. I mean, it's out there, I just haven't found it yet. That they were going to have like a pre-vote before the convention to, uh, you know, say, okay, Mr. Biden's our nominee. Well, we kind of know that, right? I mean, so
Right.
why would you do it in July? Well, I don't think they saw coming what has come, which again, they should have. I mean, it's not new, okay? It's been out there for at least 2 years that Biden's too, older. Um, and you said it last week very well. Lord help us if he has another stumble. That could just be, hell, Judy and I walking around here in Chicago. We're holding on to each other. The sidewalks aren't real straight. And, we're stumbling. I mean, we're not 80s. So, I mean, anything. I mean, a verbal stumble, uh, anything. So
And he shouldn't
I
be
don't,
riding the bike anymore. You can't trust.
well, but see, there's a couple things going. Uh, Most of Americans now, or many Americans, have unfortunately encounters with loved ones with dementia or Alzheimer's or both, and even just aging. You still think you can do things you can't do, you know? Uh, I have to look now. Like I was laughing the other day. I was at a bookstore, something down on the lowest shelf, and I got down the floor, and then I said, wonder if I'm gonna be able to get back up. You can laugh about, but I'm not the president of the United States. Nobody's going to worry about me getting up, but it does. And Biden uh, has apparently has some neuropathy with his feet. I mean, there's just all kinds of things that are aging problems that are there. Uh, but the one that should concern us is his cognition. Now there are people, and I think maybe it was Anti-Guy. Somebody tonight said that he's a great manager. Joe Biden is a great manager. He's been a great manager, and that's a very important job for the president. It's probably his most important political job. He or she, first of all, sets the tone for the nation. So the simple question is, do you want Joe Biden to set the tone for the nation, or do you want Donald Trump to set the tone for the nation? No
Well,
other question needs.
the crowd's been mentioning here about the election in France, and we know what happened in England. And France looked bad, but then all of a sudden, it looks like the youth came out. And
Okay. Now, what
does
you?
that have
Yes. Well,
any
no, I think
relation
no, no, I
correlation
don't.
with us?
I mean, yes and no. That's really hedging my answers, right? Certainly, the feeling was, Brian, before those two elections in Britain and France, particularly, that it was becoming a conservative, right wing, semi fascist world, dictatorships, that kind of thing. Uh, the left won in both places. That's great. Okay, that's great for the world.
With the
Okay,
youth vote, correct?
was
Are
the
we?
youth vote? Yes, yes. Now, were the candidates 80 years old? No.
Well, I
And
don't know. Does it
yes, yes,
matter?
that matters so much in
Because the
America.
youth love Bernie Sanders.
There's a difference. Bernie Sanders thinks, and I'm saying this in a positive way, thinks like an 18 to 25-year-old. Idealistic. We've said we both Bernie supporters,
Right. So
but
I don't know that age is necessarily the worst thing. It's Biden's age. He's got a
well, I'm
fast
talking.
track to 90. You know what I mean?
I'm talking about, and Trump. No, age. That's what I'm saying, Brian. I don't know. Maybe I'm not making myself clear. Is you can't apply what happened in France and England and sit back and say it's okay because their candidates who won are not 81 years old.
But was
Brian,
it
look.
about the fact that they were young, or was it about the fact that the youth saw where this was going and said, "We got to put an end
Well,
to
I don't
this"?
know. You'd have to poll, and I'm not. I mean, you have to poll each individual
I see.
person.
I don't know. I'm hoping that that's the case.
No,
That the
see,
youth will
no,
finally just
no.
come
I
out
mean,
and say,
I've heard a lot of
"This
young
means
people.
something to us."
I mean, think about it. When you were young, when you were 18,
I
19,
cared about
maybe.
elections from 68 on.
I'm not talking about that, Brian. I'm talking about the age thing. The motto of my generation was don't trust anyone over 30
Yes, but people loved. Was it McCarthy or
because
Eugene McCarthy?
their stand, they didn't love them. They loved that McCarthy, they believed Eugene McCarthy would get us out of the war.
Dave, for example, you were a
Go
public
ahead.
school teacher and you were one of the older ones. There are young farts and there are old farts. I think
Correct.
it's if you have a
No,
certain amount of energy that you exude, it shouldn't matter,
no,
should it?
I would differ with you a little bit. I still think there comes a time, and I believe that to be true, when the world changes so much that you're not part of it in the way you were coming through it. If I'm
Okay.
making my
Yes.
So what I'm saying, when I left teaching, I was what 13 years ago. So I was 59. There was no way I was in tune with the younger generation like I was when I started teaching and I was 34. Just no way. Just no way. And today at 72, I'm further away from it. Now, some people think that, I'm pretty hip for an old guy. What was the thing, pretty fly for a white guy? Well, pretty fly, I guess, for an old guy, maybe something like that. But I still know, and we'll come to that in a moment. But the idea, I think age is something, well, let me put it like this: age and perception. Joe Biden, right now, is on the wrong side of what many youth feel he should be in the Palestinian Israeli dispute. That's, that's, and any race so close, you've got to have every vote have it. So I'm not saying that's a reason to replace him.
Well,
I'm
maybe
just
with the
saying,
Democratic youth, but not for the youth in general. We're not sure about that. I don't know that that works across the country with Republicans and Democratic youth.
and you're talking about across the country. It doesn't have to be across the country.
Because again, we know
This
that in the
comes down,
Democratic Party that's split, and we know where the Republican Party is. So you're getting
well,
there's
but
still more
I would say,
anti-Palestinian than
I
anything.
would say this: while both parties are split in pro-Biden, anti-Biden, the Democratic side, and pro-Trump, anti-Trump on the other side, um, it. I still think in the end, Republican voters will stay more than maybe people would stay with Biden at this point. Republican voters, they're not going anywhere. I was talking to my grandson today, and you can't use one thing, but I said something about, I said, he goes to high school in Alabama. He'll be a freshman last year, he'll be a sophomore this year. And we were talking. In fact, actually, he wanted to troll his own friends. So we got a picture of him in front of Trump Tower here in Chicago today. Someone said that to my friends, but laughing, I said, "Well, most of your friends aren't they Trumpers?" He says, "Most." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "All." Now that's Alabama and the South. Okay, I mean I
Mhm.
understand that, but there are places like that, and you have to remember, Brian. We've said it, and we'll say it again, and sometimes it changes. But the election is going to be decided in no more than 10 states and probably less than that. Okay.
Correct.
What we call the swings. Now, what has people concerned also is states like Virginia, which were pretty much past the purple stage in terms of the president, are now apparently, according to some polls, back in play. Now, that's the thing that I find most disappointing. Polls are showing everything, right? I mean, they're showing every possibility. I just looked at some tonight that said Biden is now emerging in, since all this, has surpassed Trump in 5 of the 7 swing states. We don't know what the truth is.
Right.
And whoever said the only poll that counts is on election day was absolutely correct. That's, and that's another thing. The polls, which people are kind of hanging their hat on, I think the polls were very unfavorable to liberals in both England and France. That really caught them by surprise. Now, again, we don't know how what should I say, eyes on Georgia. That's very much true. Certainly, that has Georgia is 2 states, just like South Jersey or New Jersey is 2 states.
Right. It's two states.
Where I lived and where you lived is Republican territory. It's been Republican territory forever, and it's even more Republican territory than it was when I left 13 years ago. North Jersey, no.
Ohio is you have the 4 cities that are
Hmm.
Democratic, and then the rest of the state is all conservative.
Right. An aside here, real quickly, but kind of a joke. Somebody was saying how to not really satirical. I mean, they were being satirical, but how to fix America. And in this one thing, they said rearrange America a little bit. They said admit Washington D.C. as a state, right? Admit Puerto Rico as a state. You'd have more democratic states. But they said take Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, and South Dakota and make them one state. Because think about it. I mean, right there, you're
It's
talking
not going to
about.
happen. It's just not going to
I
happen.
know that, but it's so unfair
We know,
that
and
they
it's
get those
terrible.
votes.
It's a
Yeah,
joke.
and
By the way,
so
this is a good point that it's about Deere was talking about with,
put it
they did
up
that
again.
without
I missed it.
Roe versus Wade. You've got Roe versus Wade here. We still have that in our pockets. You hope that the female vote is going to.
Ichabod, I would agree, but again, you know, I had this really great talk with this Uber driver for I don't know, maybe 35 minutes. It was a long drive. Anyway, here in Chicago, and he was liberal. He was very cautious at first because if you're an Uber
Right, you
driver,
don't know who's right.
and then he started talking about the different things and how this kinds of things experiences he's had. Um, and it was interesting. I mean, his take was interesting. How can a woman, vote for Donald Trump? And I said, well, I just read something. Oh no, I'm sorry. He said he heard an interview with a woman from the South who said the worst thing that happened in American politics is women got the vote. I mean, that's just a Floridian, right? I said, well, there's a big feeling in the South and in the Midwest that politics is men's work. As weird as that is, um, you know, they're kind of living the handmaid's tale right now. Um, okay, let's look at T-Bone here. Biden's campaign faces significant challenges, and there's a perception that the mainstream media is accommodating Trumpism. Now, you know what, T-Bone, and I, I don't find that to be true. I think what happens is, let me do it this way. I'll do it with Brian, the school system where you work and where I work, Bridgeton, right? I was a reporter who covered that before I was a teacher there. And the superintendent made this big, long proclamation that the Bridgeton Evening News, which was the local paper that I worked for, was anti Bridgeton education. I said, okay, I'll take up that challenge. I said, I will go back and take a year's worth of papers and I'll go through it and I'll pick two categories. No, or I'm saying three categories: pro, anti, and neutral. And I said, you're going to, and it was like 9 to 11 to 1 or more, either neutral or pro. But what happens is those negative things stay in our head. I see an awful lot of in what I read. Now I read voraciously across a number of platforms. There's an awful lot of media people attacking Trump. Now, what does happen is, and you saw the little media war. New York Times, for some reason, came out immediately. Joe quit. That was it.
Right.
But the Philadelphia Inquirer came out immediately with no Trump, make Trump quit. So it kind of is a balance around that. But I think we all of us have such vested interest in it. Well, for one thing, what the hell's media now? What's that? Is it it's certainly not Breitbart? It's certainly not OAN. Now let's see what Anthony has to say here. I'm made to feel guilty for not donating to the Democratic Party, but I don't have enough funds to donate every time. Oh, Anthony, absolutely. I would say, Brian, I don't know. Well, I probably have more subscription sites than you do. I would say that I get, on average, 10 funding requests a day.
I get close to that.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Not
So
10,
I'm,
but
yeah. No, and I don't have any
five.
locals. These are all national sites for Biden or basically for Biden. I do get a couple from Heritage Foundation, which is kind of interesting. But let's get to Trump for a moment. What do you say about Donald Trump? You say the man is he wouldn't know the truth. He doesn't know the truth. I don't know that he knows it. I know he doesn't care about it. And maybe he did do a little bit of an error here. If you saw this week, he tried to distance himself from Project 2025. Have you been following that story?
Yes, indeed.
I don't know about it. I don't agree with it. Well, first of all, I don't know about it, and I don't agree with it in there. That can't be. They're completely contradictory statements. I know about it, and I don't like what I see in there, right? That's acceptable. I don't know what's in there, so how can I comment on it?
Right.
That's acceptable. But not, I don't know what's in there, but I don't like it. That is a complete and utter lie. 4 of the ranking people at Heritage who put this together were members of his administration. One was his bag man, and I don't mean that as the hitman. He was literally carried his bag, and he made him. So that bag man, is now a big time GOP Trump kind of guy, and he's part of that. Richard Smith, who is the main architect behind it, there's at least 5, I think, different pictures circulating where Smith and Trump have been together. I mean, in proximity, shaking hands. So we just know, Trump lies about everything, but really encourage people seriously. Pam Garwood, who remember this?
Yes, absolutely. I remember Pam. And she's part of Divided We Stand.
Yeah, I said she is divided. She sent out something I thought was interesting. It was a video highlight of what's in 2025. And it's scary. Even, I don't expect anybody. I said, I keep saying I'm going to. I haven't. Read the 928 pages. But there's enough out there, synopsis and that kind of thing. And people are breaking it down. And
you don't even have to really know the break. You just have to know that they've got some really shitty things coming through the pike.
Well, and shitty across the board to just about everybody.
Right. Now, right there, you just said Social Security. That there is enough to know.
But you know what's funny, though? Americans seem to be getting more and more comfortable with voting against their own self-interest. I'm going to submit tonight for consideration, as Rod Serling used to say, or for your consideration. Apparently, there are old people in Florida who hate black people or brown people more than they want to get their Social Security check. That's bizarre to me. That's,
well, that kind of thing is, look, I don't want to go into other issues, but some people are like that around the world in some of the situations.
I understand that. That just always boggles my mind. I'm not going to
vote for somebody else is greater than their love for their own.
Well, and then you've got the other side of, one of your favorite topics, religion, their belief in maybe a one issue like abortion. They're willing, apparently they are willing to give up their Social Security to stop abortion.
Right.
Well, wait a minute, anyway. But so you're starting to see more things now, and I think it's a balance. There's starting to be a backlash against media, and there should be. How come you're calling for Joe Biden to step down? Why don't you call for the liar to step down?
Because we know, because you have two camps, and they know what the Republicans are not going to do. We are just worried about ourselves. It's like you wouldn't take sports analogies. Do you have to get rid of a certain player? The Sixers. Those who follow back, should they trade Embiid? That kind of thing. That always comes up.
And the thing is, it's interesting you bring that up. Look, if your team doesn't do well, they don't fire the players, right? They fire the coach.
Coach, right?
And in this case, if you're not doing well, you don't get rid of the cabinet members. It's got to be the president.
Got to be the president.
And in this case, now, as I say,
and by the way, do you have a problem? I know you said a couple of weeks ago that right now, because there's not many choices you stay in. Would you have a problem if they did, or they kind of forced Joe out and said, "Okay, Joe,
no,
I really do."
None whatsoever.
Okay.
No, I will accept whatever they do, because whatever they do will come up to the person who will battle Trump. And I don't really, like I said, I don't really know who that should be. I have no idea. So in this case, I'm just going to say whomever it is. It's not going to be some psycho killer. So, although that might be good. It'll be a reputable. But the question is, and I'll actually go on. I'm not going to second guess. It'll be what it will be. You and I aren't going to have a vote.
Well, let's just put it this way. If I can ask you this, sure. Do you think there's a whole hell of a lot of a difference whether they decide to go with somebody new or stay with Joe? Will there be much of a difference in the election?
I think what they're concerned right now is Joe Biden's negatives outweighing, which should not, but outweighing his positives. And they're not talking about Democrats. They're talking about the voters, whether it's young voters, maybe minority voters who don't come out all the time. Now there you are again. Okay, Joe Biden has done very well with black constituencies. He went and spoke
Absolutely.
what
They're the
he
one who
went
saved his
right and well yeah in
presidency.
South Carolina. He spoke I think it was today right at the
Clyburn was
black church in Philadelphia, standing ovation. And I mean, and you can kind of contrast that, but of course, it's not going to mean anything. Donald Trump spoke to a black church that had 7 black people in it. That was it. Everybody else was white. Joe Biden spoke to a black church where they didn't have a white person in there, right? It was a real black church. Well, they had a couple white people, but I mean, certainly, not the way. And that alone, but it's not, it's just not enough. Um, it's just not enough. There aren't enough Americans right now, I fear, that see Donald Trump as the danger that he is. Um, and I think, Brian, I was kind of guilty of that prior to Trump. I kind of naively thought democracy would be around. It might get battered a little bit. I
especially when you have
never
the
thought.
strongest country in the world dictating whether it's going to be around or
Um,
not.
what was this? The main problem is not addressed. Joe is old, and initially, look, you can always say, I don't think. Now, this is my guess. The people close to Joe. Now, we don't know who those people are exactly. But it'd be some of his cabinet members. This makes sense. His family, some of his cabinet members, some senators and House people, and maybe a couple, whatever governors or people in there. Uh, I don't think they saw his being old as a problem, and it may not be if he functions the way they talk about, right? You don't say, if he does really well, you don't say, in his daily functioning, but it doesn't. There have been a number of warning signs. A columnist went and documented, it's either 21 or 22, and I was going to write it down. I didn't. 21 or 22 disturbing moments in Joe Biden's public appearances that could be cause for concern. Um, you know, uh, then others turn and say, "Well, he's never been a good debater, and he hasn't really. Certainly, his stutter. Um, you know, and I don't know now, Brian. I mean, I think sometimes, well, they'd say, well, his stutter, and dismiss it. But there's two ways. There's a physical stuttering that he has,
Right.
okay? But also, as you get older and start to stammer, you can't really think that fast.
Right. And then he just shuts
That's
down.
and that's a different kind of stutter, right?
Right.
So we don't know. Um, and it's just so confusing. I don't know if you saw, they came out with a full medical report, but the medical report I think was 2 years old, and it was stellar. But first of all, it's 2 years old. People want to know today, not 2 years ago. And secondly, now there's allegations that the doctor who did it was, nothing corrupt about it, but it could be there. Is he received some funding from a project that Joe, had touched? The problem is too, Brian, and I see it all the time in Washington D.C. They're all incestuous, and I don't mean this sexually. They go from lobbying to here and there and that and this thing, and they're all running around, together. Um, there's talk, but I mean, there's talk that Joe Biden is too influential in Joe's life. Well, hell, they're married.
But you see, that happens. That happened with Raisa Gorbachev, with Mikhail Gorbachev. People say Nancy Reagan kind of held,
Well, Nancy Reagan had to, and so did Woodrow Wilson's wife.
and
Woodrow
Roosevelt.
Wilson's
I'm
wife.
not Roosevelt.
Wilson had his stroke. He was
Mm,
incapacitated. She was in charge. They hid it, right? And Reagan, apparently now we find out was, more far gone than we thought. But they were
right.
able to hit it. And Nancy was a very powerful woman.
He didn't have
Um,
those press conferences that last year. That was for sure.
well, Biden doesn't have a great record
He's
with
much
press
better,
conferences.
right?
Now, did you watch the interview the other night? I did not.
I watched some of
There's
it. Some of
there's
it.
a reason. I thought it was on at one time, and I still, whenever I'm traveling, I get confused. So I watched the after playing the highlights. Um, jo- no matter what, Joe Biden will never be confused with the great communicators. He's
I
not
think he
Abraham
was
Lincoln.
using, Trump's orange, whatever you want to call it,
Well,
skin tone.
that was a thing that a lot of people, and I can see that. Tonight I'm doing a different computer than I normally use. I don't have my mic, I just travel light. And I'm kind of washed out tonight too. I could have adjusted it, but I didn't. So, I mean, lighting has a lot to do with things. Makeup has a lot to do with
And that's
things.
what Trump does know. He knows
Well, well,
that.
yeah, well, and certainly he knows. And as I'm going to use my grandson, who's not a Trump supporter, obviously, but he said, man, and I think this is a young person's view. He just seemed to have so much more energy, Grandpa. Seemed to have so much more energy. That's a pretty conclusive statement from that debate.
He's
Biden
talking
didn't have it.
right. He's talking about Trump.
Biden didn't have it. And the thing that's most amazing to me, two things about, still come back to the debate for a moment. One is that Donald Trump got off the best line of the night. I don't know what he said in that sentence, and I don't think he does either. That was the best line of the night. There's no question in my
Right.
mind. That struck. Now it kind of got lost because of all Trump's lies, and it should. But that was a great
Yeah, it hit
line.
home because we all, it's
We're
like a
all
joke.
thinking that,
It's
oh my
something funny
God.
that everybody can relate to.
And if Donald Trump could see it, how I was. Now, put that back up because that's one of my heritage. It's one of my places I hang out.
Is this the one?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. There's no question heritage is at the forefront. It is the most conservative. It is the most right wing. It's been staffed with neo Nazis. That's not. Now, the thing that's scary about heritage is this. I don't think David Duke is that smart. When he was head of the KKK. I know he went to some colleges and stuff. The people at Heritage are not dumb. They are very, very, very smart. They are. Now, we might not like what they do. They may be evil people, but they are not dumb. And so you have to battle somebody who is smart and pushing those ideas. And they know that Trump will pick up what they say. He can deny all he wants. He's going to follow 2025, and 2025, make no mistake about it, is a heritage document. Let's see. He looked really pale during the debate. I was like, "Whoa, buddy!" That I assume talking about Biden, and that was the first thing again. And we look at I always look at when I say real people who are involved in politics, like I am, or to a certain extent you are. So Judy just looked at him. The first thing was, "Oh my God, what's wrong with Joe Biden?" I was talking to my daughter-in-law tonight, and of course she's kind of come up with, "I can't do this anymore," politics kind of feel. But we were talking a little bit, and she said, and she rarely curses, but she said, when I saw Joe Biden and his first answers, I said, "What the fuck?"
Right. That first, where Ronnie grabbed the pillow, like, oh my God, because it was that cringe moment, like, oh, he's fucking up right from the start.
So, we've kind of come full circle or around or haven't gotten anywhere or going off on tangents. I think the reason we can't get anywhere right now is nobody really knows what the answers are. I know anything that Global posts is, we have some good thinkers here. I mean, to me, it's very simple. Okay, the Constitution, is pretty straightforward, and the First Amendment is very straightforward, and it says Congress shall make no law. Really, what it says is you can make no law supporting any one religion or dissing any religion. And basically, the safest way to do that is not to have religion in public places. That's the way to do it. Yet you have Louisiana, who's going to post the Ten Commandments in every classroom, or every school, not every classroom, I'm sorry. And you have the school superintendent of Oklahoma. And from what I've read about him, he has ultimate power. Like some superintendents just kind of wishy-washy. No, he's got a lot. Who says not only must there be Bibles in every classroom, but every class must teach the Bible. And Brian, you're a great teacher. I mean, I have no
Well,
problem. I've
I don't
seen you
know that I am,
teach.
but thank you.
You are. No, I've seen you teach, and I wouldn't tell you were if you weren't. You are a great teacher. But I don't think you'd be a great teacher of the
No,
Bible
I would have a
when
real
you're an
problem.
atheist and don't believe in it.
If
I
there
mean,
would be any teacher at the school where I teach that would have, I think there'd probably be maybe one or two others besides me who would have a real problem with that.
yeah,
Uh,
and I would too. I mean,
you would not teach if you were before us. You would say, look, you're going to have to understand, I'm not doing that.
Well, I would. I mean, there's creative ways around it that I would think I would work with, but I wouldn't advise a non-tenured teacher to do those. And as I
Well,
said before,
that is
I
an issue for
I
non-tenured, right?
actually when I was teaching British Lit, the years I was teaching British Lit, we worked in things in the King James Bible, but as words, not the Word of God. We tried it into Shakespeare because if you, King James Bible and Shakespeare were kind of contemporaries, right? That language, and so it helped with language. I mean, it's then I think I actually did post it on Divided We Stand. Somebody took like 20 math lessons or something like that. Like the one that sticks in my mind. Solomon had 700 wives. If he surveyed whatever, and you could do that. But you wouldn't have
Yeah,
a job.
you could play with that stuff a lot, and
But I mean, so what happens is in the past, I would be assured that that Louisiana thing. Let's see what Gary's got here. Younger generation wants someone who represents them. My dear nephew in Florida lamented the fact yesterday they've not seen a rep for them in their lifetime. Turned off. Viva France. And I'm going to go with Gary on that. It's been my dealings with young people that and look, there's a whole. Okay, let's try this. If you're 60, right? Let's just say you're 60 years old. No, let's go even more. 65, retirement age. Joe Biden's old for you, right? I mean,
right.
when you drop all the way down to 40s and 30s and 20s and 10s, and you have you have Dianne Feinstein, you had Nancy Pelosi, you have Mitch McConnell, you have Bernie Sanders, who, as was pointed out, was one of those people because of what he espoused and what he believed in, who was able to overcome, the age factor. But they're rarities, right? And then you see your champions like AOC, whom a lot of young people find speaks for them. Well, not just the book of
He's a mob boss. That's what he is.
who
The big boy.
oh the God, yeah, well, certainly. I mean, we could go all night on that. It's just very
Right.
simple. You cannot. I don't see how you can be a believer in real life and be a believer that every word in the Bible is true. It's not. There are contradictions within the Bible, and this, all over the place. Forget. We don't have to pick them up. But the idea of it is, if you want a document to run America, we have a couple. We have the Declaration of Independence, we have the Constitution, we have the amendments, we have the Federalist Papers, we have the Gettysburg Address. They're the ones, not the Bible, that
Right.
runs.
And you keep going that far back. Now you're getting into ether and, the earth is the center of
And
the
I'd
universe.
even,
Craziness.
I'd even feel better. I'd still fight it, but I'd feel better if the people who want the Bible were demonstrated that they knew what was in the Bible and were following the precepts of the Bible.
Right. But
Even there, I mean, at least okay.
it's
Now we need a little bit of humor tonight, right? We've but it's not a completely serious show, uh, but we're really. So let me do this first in case I forget it. So we've talked a lot about Biden tonight, and we've really reached no conclusions. And the reason is there's no good conclusions to reach right now. And I think Brian, you said it earlier, kind of basically you have a vote, you'll vote, and that vote will go to whoever the Democratic nominee is for Donald Trump. And we need that kind of commitment. And I think we'll have that from Democrats. I don't think there are too many people who, if Joe Biden steps down or even forced out, and I don't think they won't sit it out or vote for Donald Trump or vote for Robert Kennedy or vote for Cornel West or
I still
vote,
think
vote
that the biggest problems that somebody mentioned is, at least somewhere in there, is let's suppose it turns out like France or like Britain, but there's a difference here that these
and
bastards
point
are
that
gonna
out.
cheat. They're going to
Point,
cheat, and that
they're
means
not that
we're going to
well,
have that problem. I mean, we're talking about
and
after the election, post-election,
and you and I had that brief discussion this week
and
a few
we're going to
times
have a
about.
hell of a show,
Oh,
a lot of good shows for about a
yeah,
month or two.
no, and I tend to agree with you. Um, Not tend to agree. I agree with you. I think no matter what, if Trump wins, we're in real trouble. If Trump loses, the trouble doesn't go away. It's a
Right,
different
like
kind.
last time, it
It's a
didn't go
different
away.
kind of trouble, and there's no guarantee with so many states being held Republican. And the other thing that kind of goes under the radar here Uh, again, I'm going to use you as every man or every person. Would you say that if you do your job pretty well, right? Anybody who does their job pretty well, that as they get experience, they get better at it. Would you agree with that? I mean, I would. All things being equal.
Right.
Well, you have a lot of election officials around the country that fall into that. It's not a full time job everywhere.
Mhm.
It's a part time job, and I was very close to that elections, in New Jersey. And you need some experience, veteran stuff. I mean, things happen that are very weird
Absolutely.
on
Right.
election days, and you need to make some decisions. Well, we may have a first election where there are more people doing their first election or second election than we've ever had before because a lot of people got out because of threats, you know. And that's another side. I haven't seen too many, and I could almost say I haven't seen any threats on Republicans, you know, viable threats. It's usually a right wing, authoritarian, supposedly conservative Trumpers who threaten bodily harm. But, you know, a lot of people just said it's not worth it. I'm not going to, I can do other things for America. So not only are you going to have a targeted approach, which you've talked about very eloquently, from the Republican Party disputing that, you're going to have not such qualified people. And I will say this: you can't take any one thing and say it's this thing everywhere in the country. But in the area that was, has been heavily Republican, I watched Republicans and Democrats on election day who worked the polls really put that aside, and do what was best for the polling
Good point.
situation.
Right.
And I don't think we have that now in America. But let's have a little bit of levity. One of your sexual fantasies has always been, and I think it's more than you let on, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Um, anyway, did you see what she did this week? I'll
No,
tell
I
you what.
don't
I'll
follow
tell
her
you. I'll tell you.
at all.
I'll tell you what. Now, she's going to come out with stuff. So, I guess her point was going to be that Joe Biden was too old. So she said, while it's true that the average age of the signers of the Declaration of Independence was 45, many of them were under 40. And she proceeded to name 8. But there was a problem. Do you know what the problem was? 6 of those 8 never signed the Declaration of
Hmm.
Independence. Yes,
Interesting.
James Madison was 18. He didn't sign. Benjamin Franklin didn't, and he was old. He didn't sign. Uh, Alexander Hamilton didn't sign. And but I use that as, I almost think a comment like that really is impeachable. you know, I mean, she just shouldn't be there, but she is. Lauren Boebert looks like the comeback kid, right? She moved her vote. District is there. Matt Gaetz, how does he does it? And now I'm going to end my portion of the Trump with this. I've been following, and I don't understand this, Brian, and I'm being serious. I don't mean I don't understand. I just don't get this. I have seen documents that look like real court documents, but again, that doesn't mean they are, where a 13-year-old later in testimony said in some very close detail that Donald Trump indeed did rape her,
Hmm.
and apparently on more than one occasion. Now, either Donald Trump did that or Donald Trump didn't do that, right? Now, with his people, it doesn't make any difference. They support him anyway, and they can't tell me differently.
Yeah.
There's many of those things. But that's the kind of thing that kind of bothers me overall. We just don't know, Brian. We don't know what the truth is anymore. And I don't. Maybe we didn't. Maybe, but I really believe. I really, and I was. I'm not saying it wasn't always that way. I knew though, pretty much, if you knew, the background of the newspaper that you were reading, you knew, whether it was correct or not. There were
Right.
some that slanted Republican, some that slanted Democrat, et cetera, et cetera. Now it's just we don't even know, and everybody's labeling everything as untrue or true. We haven't even seen AI yet, right? Although in some other elections, it's already playing a role. With false images, truth. You've got the greatest. When I say the greatest, I shouldn't say numerically greatest liar ever in the history, running for president of the United States. That sets the tone. Matt Gaetz either engaged in sexual activities with young girls or he didn't. Okay. Lauren Boebert did do a hand job for a boyfriend. We saw that. But that's another thing. There was a thing that happened not too long ago with Boebert. She was accused of giving someone the finger in the airport, like somebody harassing her, right? No, I didn't do that. Well, somebody smart and enterprising got the camera photo of her in the airport, right? She's giving the finger, right? So it doesn't. I mean, it just boggles my. And that's going to be a real problem. When there is no more truth, we're really in trouble.
Right.
We really are.
That's true.
And
Okay.
so, go ahead. I'm sorry, Brian.
No, just saying. I thought we were going to end it on that, but
Yeah, well, I'm just saying that's where I'm going to end it. I mean,
right. And that's
but
where
I would
we
like,
should end it.
I would like to have you have last word, and not predicting or anything. Um, let's talk about feelings. I mean, I'm being serious because I think that's where we are now. We don't know what's going to happen, but we do have feelings, right? Not feelings of what's going to happen, just feelings about what is happening, right? Distinguishing the two. What are you feeling? How are you feeling right now with all this going on?
I said I have been very lucky in my life. I've had some difficult things in my life, but I've never had depression. I said to Ronnie, I said, these last 6 or 7 days, though I don't have depression, I felt depressed,
Hmm.
and I have
Well,
had this feeling where I can't get out of it, and I just I don't know where to go with it. I think what bothered me the most was the fact when Biden started that debate and that first question, he just completely failed. I thought, that's a disgrace. I mean, I felt bad for the man, but it cannot be this way. This is why, even just with that, I'd say, just go, just go, because I'm one of the biggest supporters for you, Joe. I see your worth, but don't try to be a hero in this thing. I don't know what's better. I'm just saying
um, yeah,
I
I
don't
think
feel
again,
good right now.
and it's unfortunate. Sometimes you shouldn't speak the truth. I mean, you shouldn't lie, just shouldn't say it. And sometimes we fall into saying things that sound good at certain times and don't at others. And I really didn't like the way it came across. I understand it, but with Joe, because I think he's been a tremendous. I don't want to say tremendous. Yeah, yeah, I will. I'm going to say
Just
he's been a
despite all the
tremendous.
crap he's gone through
I
with the
want to. Yeah, I'm going to
Republicans,
go with
he's
tremendous. He's
tremendous.
been
He
a
did a
tremendous
great
president.
job.
No, he's done a great job. No question about that. But he ended the stuff, or not? Yeah. Oh, well, kind of ended this Stephanopoulos interview this way. George asked him, which is a very valid kind of closing question. Well, what happens if, despite your best effort, you lose? And Joe said, as long as we gave it our all,
That's not good enough. That's
no,
got
it's not. Because what's going to happen is he will go from being, I think, historically, a very good president, both for stopping Trump the first time through there. If Joe runs and if he loses to Trump, that is going to be his legacy. And it could be the legacy as
right.
the I mean,
I also say, but you know what, Dave? In the end, the people of the United States, it'll be their legacy too. I think it'll be
well,
Biden and the
no,
people.
I understand that. However, you know that basically, the buck stops here kind of thing. And,
No,
you know,
I take no,
that would be,
it's going to sound corny, but like Truman said, we work for the people. The people are the boss in a certain sense, and we have to come through, and it's our
well,
time.
some of them are, but, and I'd be interested for any of our audience to be able to do this because I've thought about it. I can't remember what. Is there some way that each person who is convinced and committed to the Democratic nominee, whomever it turns out to be, could get a hold of someone who truly hasn't made up their mind, right? And convince them, because you're not going to change anybody who's, for Trump. That's not going to happen. Um, but I don't know, it's not like, hey, go to Joe's bar. Everybody in Joe's hasn't made up their mind, right? So talk to somebody from. I mean, we don't even know where they are. We don't even know who they are. I have no idea how to reach them or reach out to them. Uh,
Do they
you
have to
know,
be burned by Trump to change their vote?
or well, I'm
Unfortunately,
not
it'll be
saying to
too late.
change. I'm not interested in change. I mean, I'm just saying there are people out there, believe it or not, who
Right, very
who
few.
either who either haven't made up their mind or say I'm not going to vote because I don't like either one. They're the
And
people. You
what's
know,
going on in that type of brain that you
I
can't
could
distinguish
understand. No, you want to know something? I can understand
That's
that.
not the
I
voter
really
that
do.
I really want out there. But
Well, no, I want. Yeah, I do. I want anybody who isn't going to vote
well,
for
of course,
Trump.
we want to win.
But the idea of it is this, Brian. I mean, you say you can. I can. This election is making my head hurt. I mean, who's telling the truth? You know, if you're not sure, or
Right.
at least have a side, I can understand this. I mean,
Nobody needs to confuse
and
you.
everybody's saying, okay, look. I mean, let's just take one simple thing. One simple thing that I think most Americans could agree is wrong. Donald Trump either raped a 13-year-old or he did not. Joe Biden either took showers with his daughter or he didn't. Now, still, the rape is worse than taking, but they're both really crude, right? And if you begin to say, I don't know who that, well, they're both, and suddenly you're not.
Hmm.
So let's see what Veg, we'll let Veg close it. So Veg
Can I
says,
just? I
he's
want
the,
to interrupt for 1 second because
sure.
Veg is. I was watching one of his videos and I've been very kind of out of touch with Canadian politics, but Veg has helped me with my naivete in Canadian politics, and
Mhm.
apparently Canada, the one country I could always look to and say that's a liberal bastion, and we can always count on Canada, and I think that's part of my. I don't say I don't have depression, but I was depressed this week. That added to it because I was always it always had in the back of my mind. At least there's Canada, and then I hear, look what's going on up there, and apparently
No,
it's
you know,
not very good.
and it's funny because I sort of had the same kind of feeling you did. And I mean, I don't have a Canadian think tank around me or anything. I used to work right next to the Canadian embassy in D.C. But no, I met some. I kind of have met a few Canadians over the past year or so. I said, well, I think no, and I mean they do go off. So could Dave, let's see, work free hugs gig on sidewalk and live stream it? Uh, I'm going to leave that global. This is the end. I will tell you this. Years ago, don't ask me how many. I read a blurb somewhere about a guy got arrested, and what he was doing was just that, going up and hugging people and say, "I love you." That's all he was doing. I mean, he wasn't grabbing their boobs or doing that. And it was really interesting to see how many people were uncomfortable with that. And so I decided I was going to try that, and then I thought, even I'm not that there.
You know,
Isn't that weird, though? I mean, think about that, Brent. We live in a world where a lot of things are okay, but walking up to someone you don't know and giving them a hug and
well,
saying, "I
didn't
love you."
Morgana get in trouble at the baseball games when
Well,
she
yeah,
used to
but
come running out?
the problem with her is she stood 4 foot away from you because her breasts were so big when she hugged you.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's another one. Since you brought it up, we can't end the show without a Stormy thing. I want to speak on Stormy's behalf. She's now raised enough money to pay off her legal debts and is using the rest of the money to relocate to a safe place since she's been doxxed because they did one
Sounds
day.
like somebody's coming to Arlington
Uh,
after all.
well, we'll have to see.
All right.
Not as bad, but it's getting weird up here. Look, again, ladies and gentlemen, we apologize. I will apologize. It's my fault solely. We started Promise You a midweek, and we didn't do it this week because, to be honest with you, I always tackle Brian on this, but seeing my son, but basically came up here to see my granddaughter was more important. But I think now my summer's kind of set. Your summer's kind of set,
Yep,
Brian.
me
So we'll
too.
try to do something in the middle of the week. Oh, and the other announcement is we've decided we're experimenting with it. We'll stay with Sunday, but in the summer we're going to make it a 9 o'clock
9
show
o'clock. It's
rather
just
than eight.
easier.
Now we reserve the right to change that in the fall, or change it anytime. But
Right.
right now it just appears to be 9 o'clock. Seems to be better for us, and we understand it's an hour later, and people have to go to work. And if you miss the show, I mean, certainly work is more important than our show. But at this point, Brian and I have talked about it, and we think that we will be at 9. So, Brian,
Right.
when I get back, I fly out tomorrow, actually. So I'll give you a call maybe tomorrow night. We'll figure out what day we want to do midweek, and then we'll go
All
from
right.
there.
That sounds great,
All
David.
right. Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
See you.